does. So alt tags play an important role because, again, if the image doesn't load on the web page for some reason, then the alt tag is there as a replacement. It's also there to help the search engines rank those images and understand the page a little bit better. So you always want to be able to put in the keyword query that you're trying to be found for in the alt tag. And so be as descriptive as possible. You have 125 characters to use, so be as descriptive, make it easy to read, because again, this is what's going to show up in the search engine results pages for images. Okay, let's turn our attention to internal links. So when it comes to SEO, internal links also play a vital role because basically an internal link, which is a link from one page of your website to another page of your website, allows Google to, or other search engines really, to follow the pages as they index your entire website. So it serves that purpose of allowing search engines to index. So it definitely improves the indexing. But internal linking also has many benefits, and one of the other benefits is it helps spread what we call link juice. And so link juice is basically another way of saying, this page is important because it has links from other pages on our website. So if we have a link from one page to another, and a couple of other pages on our site link to that same page, then search engines tend to take notice. And they tend to note that, if one particular page has a number of different links pointing to it, then this page may be important. And so that's what we mean by link juice. It's a signal for the search engine to determine what pages on your website are important because of the links that point to it. And so if we look at this example here, we could see that there's usually a navigation on a website that point to pages. And every page on a website tends to have a link, but if more than one page has multiple links, then again, that signals to the search engines that, hey, this particular page seems to be important because it has a lot of links pointing to it. Our attention to sitemaps. So sitemaps basically allow us to list all the web pages on our website. So we could do that in a couple of different ways. But when we do it, it basically is going to help the search engines find our pages easier. Just as I mentioned a minute ago about internal linking, when you have one link pointing to another page on your website, it helps the search engines find these pages quicker. Well, sitemaps do the same thing, except sitemaps are an entire list of links on your website, and it allows the search engines to find all your pages on your website fairly easily. But it also helps the end user too. So if you have a big website, like Amazon has a huge website with a lot of different products. Well, if you're looking for a particular product, you can do a search for it, or you can look at the sitemap, and the sitemap will list all the particular pages on the site. And so it's also good for the end user as well. So when we talk about the end user and we talk about search engines, there are really two different types of sitemaps. You got the HTML version, which is for the end user. That's going to be nothing more than a link on the website, usually in the footer. And so when you click on that sitemap link, you'll get a list of all the links on the website. Okay, so that's an HTML sitemap. Then we have the sitemap for the search engines, the spiders that want to crawl our site. So that's the XML sitemap, and an XML is just a different format. It's just a way to format all the links on our website. So the HTML sitemap is HTML written in hypertext markup language, designed for the end user. If you click on it, it helps the end user navigate the website quickly because they can find what they're looking for. And so generally, that is an HTML. Now, if we turn our attention to the XML sitemap, that's basically designed for search engines. And the thing about the XML sitemap is we work with Google to go ahead and submit the sitemap to Google so Google can quickly understand what pages on our website. So for example, if I went to a website, let's just say valleyfig.com. So if I went here and if I'm a search engine, I'm going to want to know all the URLs that are on this website. Well, as an end user, I can also just type in sitemap.xml. Usually that's the XML file where all the URLs are located. And here I can see all of the URLs on valleyfig.com. And so the idea behind an XML sitemap is we want to communicate that XML file to the search engines. And so Google in particular has what they call a search console. And search console, if you go to google.com/webmasters, so Search Console is a way to communicate with Google. And one of the ways to communicate with Google is to submit a sitemap. So we want to submit our XML sitemap. So if our XML sitemap is located in the root directory, so after our domain, valleyfig.com/sitemap.xml, we know that that file is sitting in the root directory. I can go into Search Console and I can submit my sitemap. And when I submit my sitemap, then I'm basically communicating with Google, telling Google, hey, Google, instead of trying to find all our web pages on our website, when you crawl the website, we're going to go ahead and submit the sitemap to you. So we're going to tell you all the pages on our website. And so by doing that, by submitting our sitemap.xml file to Google, it speeds up the process because Google's able to now understand all the pages on our website that have been submitted. And then once we submit those pages, then Google's going to quickly index a majority of those pages, if not all of those pages. And so that's the benefit of having an XML sitemap for the search engines, is that we can quickly submit that file to the search engine so our pages get submitted and indexed quicker. So continuing on with on-page SEO, we now turn our attention to page speed. And so page speed, also known as page load time of a particular page of a particular website, is important for SEO. Why is it important? Because Google has millions of users use their search engine, and Google wants their users to have a good experience. And so if Google ranks websites based on relevancy, they also want to take into account page speed, because if a website does not load fast or a web page doesn't load fast, then it would be detrimental for Google to rank that page high. Because what's going to happen is that page is going to get a number of clicks, and then the user experience is not going to be that great. And so therefore, it's going to have a negative impact, not only in the end user, but Google as well. And so page load time then becomes important for on-page SEO. So really, when it comes to page load time, we really want to pay attention to how long it takes our web pages to load in terms of seconds. Because if a page loads slow, then chances are the user experience is not going to be good, even from an analytics perspective. Meaning, if I go to Google, type in a query, click on a link, and then that link takes me to a website where the web page loads very slow, chances are I'm not going to spend a lot of time waiting for that page to load. I'm going to leave that page. And if I leave the page, then it's going to cause what they call a bounce. So I'm going to bounce from the page. And that's just not good for the entire search ecosystem. And so we want to pay close attention to page load time, because the faster a site or page loads, Google's going to recognize that, and that's going to help with ranking. And so how do we understand how our pages load? Well, we can look no further than a web analytics tool like Google Analytics, for example. So if we turn our attention to Google Analytics, if I go to, say, valleyfig.com's analytics account, I can look over the last 30 days and I can see, okay, on average, our average page load time for the entire site was 5 seconds, around 5 seconds. And ideally, we want our pages load as quick as possible. I would say the rule of thumb on page load time is probably no more than 3 to 4 seconds. Okay, but there are factors involved with page load time. So a couple of factors are the browser that people use. So some browsers load pages differently than other browsers. The other factor involved with browsers is the device. So you could be on a mobile device and say Internet Explorer versus on a desktop using Chrome. And you're going to have variation in terms of average page load time. So definitely browser device plays a role, but also country plays a role. The infrastructure, how much bandwidth is available. So you could be in, say, San Francisco, United States, and be on a high-speed network versus another city or another country where you're not necessarily on the same high-speed network. You're on a lower bandwidth or lower network, and that's going to affect the page load time as well. So in analytics, you can actually see the breakdown of time per country. And then, of course, the page itself. So when we talk about average page load time for a website, we're talking about the average for the entire site. But we can actually look at, in Google Analytics, the average load time for every page on the site. So ideally, if you have a particular page you want to rank organically in the search engines and the average page load time is not suitable or it's very high, then you want to address what the issues are. And so the great thing about Google Analytics is you actually have speed suggestions. So if I go to speed suggestions in Google Analytics, I'm going to be able to see the average load time for certain pages on the site. And then what Google's going to do is actually give me some feedback. So for example, I can see that the home page loads about 5.59 seconds. And so if I click on page speed suggestions, then Google is going to give me suggestions on how to speed up the page load time, not only on desktop, but on mobile as well. So when you click on page speed suggestions, you're actually going to go to a tool, a Google tool called Page Speed Insights. And then Page Speed Insights is going to allow you to see how quick your page loads. And then it's going to be able to give you feedback on what to do in order to speed up the page load time, not only for the page, but for the site. And the great thing, again, is you can see it for desktop and you can see it for mobile. So page speed is important. We want to be able to keep our page load time low, no more than probably, again, 3 to 4 seconds. Because if it's any more than that, Google's going to take notice, the other search engines are going to take notice, and they're not going to want to rank that particular page high on Google. So some ways to increase your page speed: you always want to optimize your images. You never want to have images that take a long time to load. You want to use a simple website design. Now, I know Flash, as an example, has long been disbanded, but you don't want to use other technology that's really going to slow the page load time. Of course, where your website is hosted does matter. So the server it's hosted on could be shared with other websites. And so that may eat into how quick the server responds to people trying to load your web page. And so you want to keep that in mind. So server response time does play a factor in loading. And then, of course, optimizing your code. You want to never have unnecessary code on your website. And when I say unnecessary code, some examples could be tracking code. If you're doing any search advertising, let's just say on Facebook or Bing, you try to want to minimize the amount of extra code you put on a site because that code has to execute and that eats into the page load time. So you want to be cognizant of how much code you put on your website because that will eat into the page load time. So let's talk about featured snippets. So featured snippets is the search result that generally shows up at the top of the search engine organic results. So it's informational content and you'll see it above organic results, but you'll also see it below search advertising. And so some of the common featured snippets you may see are in the form of a paragraph, a table, or a list. And so paragraph snippets tend to be the most popular. And let me show you an example of a featured snippet. So if I go to, say, google.com and type in machine learning, here you can see some paid search ads. Okay, and why do I know they're paid search ads? Because I can see ad next to them. But if I look below the paid search ads, but above the organic search results, I see a paragraph featured snippet. And this is nothing more than, again, just an informational content about machine learning. And really, the whole idea behind featured snippets is really they're just informational. And really, it's informational, and what Google likes to do is pull content in there that really answers a question. So if your content doesn't necessarily answer a question, then you can't expect your content to show up as a featured snippet. So the whole idea is with the search engines is really Google searches through a number of different sites to find content that will best answer a user's question. Like, for example, what is machine learning? Okay, so if we ask the question, what is machine learning? We can expect to find a featured snippet. And so really what users do a lot when they type in a query, they use prefixes like how does or how do or how to or what is. And so those types of questions are normally asked as part of the search query. So if you could answer those questions, then generally Google's going to recognize that. And if it's relevant, it's going to show up as a featured snippet. So the whole idea is to really create truly high quality content. So about featured snippets is if you have true high quality content that answers a question, then chances are your content may show up as a featured snippet. So the whole idea is, work to create high quality content that provides a really good answer to a really basic question. It could be anything. What is machine learning? What is a fig? How to ride a bicycle? How do I surf? All these are related questions that content can answer. And Google wants to make sure, as part of a featured snippet, that they provide content that answers that question. And not just content, the best content that does the best job with the most relevant information answer that person's search query. So here we could see our 3 examples. You have a table format. So if we want to type in aviation jobs, we could see snippets of information about the latest job listings for aviation. You could see in the middle screenshot, what is machine learning? So that's our paragraph featured snippet. And then if you type in something like building a fence, it's going to give you a list of, ways to go about building a fence. So these are all answers to questions. The query may not necessarily be in question form, but the snippet is there just in case you want to know more information about that particular query. So generally, that's how featured snippets work. And the great thing about featured snippets, it's open to everybody. The key is to have quality content. If you have quality content that provides answers to questions, then chances are your content can show up above organic search results, which will give you more visibility, drive a lot more traffic to your site, and quality traffic, because likely it's answering somebody's question. So let's do a recap of everything we talked about with on-page SEO. So before we move on to off-page, remember, on-page SEO is what we do to our website to enhance our website to be found in the search engines for relevant keywords. So it's all about relevancy. And remember, before you do anything to your website, you need to start with the basics of keyword research. You need to find keywords that are highly relevant, that have volume, and low competition. And so when you can focus on your keywords and you find out and finalize what keywords you want to be found for, then you're going to conduct on-page SEO. On-page SEO consists of a number of different factors, some of which we talked about today, starting with schema. Remember, we want to have structured data to better communicate with the search engines what our web pages are about. Then we talked about title tags. So title tags appear in search results. Remember, 65 characters. We want to make sure our keyword is in the title tag followed by our brand name. And then we talked about meta descriptions. Meta descriptions allow us to, talk specifically about what that page is all about. Meta descriptions fall under the title tag in the search results. We talked about headers, H1 through H6, H1 being the biggest in the hierarchy of headers, and having an H1 tag with your keyword provides the search engines with an identity of how strong or how important something is on a page. It also organizes the page with headers and subheaders, and it breaks up the content so it's easily understandable by the end user. We also talked about alt tags. So remember, images on its own are not recognized by search engines. So we want to surround those images with alt tags, with words that help the search engines identify what that image is. They also serve a purpose in the browser. If an image doesn't load, then we can actually see what the image is all about with the alt tag. We talked about featured snippets. There are lists, there are paragraphs, Okay, there are different types of snippets, and really the whole idea again behind snippets is answering a question with quality content. We talked about page speed, identifying how quick our pages load in Google Analytics. So if your pages don't load very quickly, then Google actually provides suggestions to speed up the page load time of a particular page. And some of the culprits that you want to look at are making sure you have images that are of good quality, but also not a lot in size. You want to make sure they're optimized. You want to look at your server response time. You want to make sure you optimize code. So there's a lot of different factors with page load time. You just want to keep an eye on what pages are not loading quick enough. And remember, we want to keep it as low as possible, but no more than 3 to 4 seconds. We talked about internal linking. Internal linking to a particular page from one page to another provides link juice. And link juice is nothing more than an indicator for the search engines to identify what pages tend to be more important than another based on the number of links pointing to that page. And then we also talked about sitemaps. So we talked about the two types of sitemaps, HTML and XML. HTML is for the end user. XML is primarily for the search engines. XML generally is going to be a file called sitemap.xml, and we could take that XML file and submit it to Google's Search Console. And so that expedites the process of indexing your site and helps your site not only get indexed faster, but will help Google understand how many pages are on your site and then get those pages indexed so that they can be found so that you can generate traffic. So all of these are factors with on-page SEO that you want to address before you move on to off-page SEO. Okay, let's turn our attention to off-page SEO. Now that we covered all the essentials for on-page, we still need to focus our attention on off-page. Remember earlier I mentioned that SEO is a two-pronged approach. We have to focus on-page SEO first, and then to complement our efforts and to continue our efforts and to continue the effort of being relevant for certain keywords, we need to do what we call off-page SEO. And those are actions we take that don't involve our website directly. Meaning we've already updated the title tag, the meta description, the alt tags, the headers, etc. We want to do things off our website that's going to allow Google and other search engines to recognize that, hey, we are relevant. These pages are relevant for certain keywords on our website. And so really when we talk about off-page SEO, it's really the technique of promoting your website using link building. And when we say technique of promoting our website using link building, that means establishing links on other websites. That's what we mean by link building. And so establishing links on other websites really enhances our SEO efforts because it improves, first and foremost, it improves the credibility of our website. So if we're on a very popular website that is known to be reputable, then having a link pointing from that website to ours just improves the credibility of our own website. Not necessarily in the minds of the search engine, but in the minds of the end user. The other benefit here is it increases our domain authority. And let's take a minute to talk about domain authority. So domain authority is simply just a score between 1 and 100. And so in digital marketing, even including SEO as a marketing channel, everything's measurable. And we want to be able to measure everything we do digitally. And so off-page SEO is measurable. One of the metrics involved with off-page SEO is domain authority. In other words, it's a score between 1 and 100 for our domain. So how does Google, how does Baidu, how do these other search engines see our domain? How authoritative is our domain? How reputable is our domain? And so having links on other websites pointing to our domain increases our reputability, increases our authority. And so I'm going to show you an example. So if you remember back on-page SEO, when we were talking about keyword research, we used a tool called Moz, Moz.com. And I would recommend using Moz.com to measure domain authority. So if we go to Moz.com, and Moz.com has a tool called Link Explorer. So if you put in your domain using their tool Link Explorer, you're going to be able to see your domain authority. And domain authority is a score between 1 and 100. And basically, it's simply just scoring your website in terms of authority. How does the search engine see your site out on the World Wide Web? The higher the score, the better. And so recommend using Moz.com Link Explorer to measure the domain authority. So the more links we have on external sites pointing to our own site, in theory, the higher the domain authority. So we're going to come back to Moz.com quite frequently as we talk about off-page SEO because we need a tool to help manage our efforts. So we're going to come back to Moz.com, but let's talk about some of these other benefits to off-page SEO. So we know it helps with the credibility, it increases our domain authority, but what are some of the other intangible efforts that are also measurable? Well, it increases our referral traffic. And by increasing our referral traffic, meaning if we're on a reputable site that gets a lot of traffic and there's a link pointing our site, then naturally we're probably going to see traffic coming from that site. And we can measure that in tools like Google Analytics. We can measure referral traffic. And so that's an inherent benefit to doing off-page SEO because we're trying to create the relevancy of our own website. We're trying to be found for relevant keywords, but yet at the same time, we can increase traffic to our website. And then certainly not lost in all this is improving our page rank. So the idea here is you need on-page and off-page SEO to work together to improve our rankings. And improving our rankings in the search engine results will inherently increase our rankings and drive traffic to the site from search engines. And that's ideally what we're trying to do. We're trying to accomplish traffic from search engines by improving our rankings. But at the same time, we improve our credibility and we improve our standing in the search engine world. And we also increase traffic to our site from all these other websites. And so there are a lot of benefits to off-page SEO. Let's talk a little bit more about some of these other benefits because according to a Backlinko, a web page with more backlinks is going to rank higher than a page with fewer backlinks. But let me just say this. With backlinking, especially from sites, it's all about credibility. It's all about quality over quantity. So we want to pay attention to quality over quantity. So let's harken back to Moz.com. And here we could see we have a domain authority of 35, but we have a lot of links, inbound links from other websites pointing to our website. We have 575 domains out there on the internet pointing to our domain, valleyfig.com. And so if we want to take a specific look at these domains, we can just simply click on linking domains. And here we could see all the different domains pointing to our website. Now, again, it's about quality, not quantity. So if we look at the domain authority, and that's a score that measures the credibility of a website, we could see the domain authority on some of these domains, like npr.org, has a domain authority of 93. And so to me, that helps boost the domain authority for our own website, our own domain. It also has the chance of driving that traffic. It also increases the credibility. But in the end, having quality links from other quality domains is going to increase our own rank on search engines. And that's the whole idea behind it. So we could actually see that we have quality websites and quality domains linking to our domain. Now, you can also use another tool. I mentioned this earlier with on-page SEO when I was talking about sitemaps. So if you go to Search Console, so that's a Google tool, we can also look at a link report and see what other websites are linking to us. So this is Google's way of communicating to us what websites are out there linking to us. And so here I can see the top linking sites to our website, valleyfig.com, is the Crumbie Kitchen, has 1,443 links pointing back to our site. cookscountry.com, Whole Foods Magazine, My Imperfect Kitchen, these are all sites with links pointing back to our site. So Search Console is a good tool. It's a good alternative tool, especially the links report is a good alternative tool to get an idea of the types of sites that are linking to your site. Now, what you're missing here in Search Console is the domain authority, but you can use the Link Explorer tool in Moz.com to measure the domain authority for any domain. It's just a matter of going to the tool itself, by going to Moz.com, by going to the Link Explorer report, and just typing in the domain, and from there you'll be able to see the domain authority. So it's all about quality over quantity. I can't stress that enough. So when it comes to off-page, really it's synonymous with link building. So it's the most effective method for off-page SEO. And it's simply just getting links from other websites to your own. So it's not as easy as it sounds, especially when we're talking about quality over quantity. But building these links to our website will help our rankings. And that's the whole idea behind off-page SEO. We want to be able to link from other websites to ours so that we can help our rankings, in addition to some of the other benefits I just mentioned. So Google recognizes backlinks as one of their top ranking factors. So in addition to some of the on-page SEO tactics that I mentioned earlier, including title tag and meta description and URL structure and headers, all those are important. But at the same time, it's a balance. So Google wants to know, hey, yes, we understand you've optimized your title tag for a keyword, but how does the rest of the internet see your website? Is your website worthy enough to add a link from a particular quality website to your website? So if there are a number of quality links, then your site must be of quality as well. And so that's the whole idea behind link building being an important factor. Because again, it's about, from Google's perspective, it's about the user experience. They want to make sure that sites ranked on page 1 of Google are quality sites. Quality sites that load well, that have good content, that have fresh content. Not just sites that have a gazillion links pointing to them with, keywords stuffed into the title tag. So it's an ecosystem. Google's and other search engines want to protect that ecosystem with quality. So that's why link building is an important factor. And so there are different types of links. So when you have a link pointing from one website to your own, the link could be a follow link or no follow link. And the whole idea behind follow or no follow is simply, hey, we know that Google and other search engines, they're spidering the entire web. The whole idea is for them to collect as many pages as these search engines can to bring them back to their servers so they can serve them up in their search engines. Well, as Google and these other search engines spider these sites, what they're doing is they're following links. That's as simple as it gets. They're following links from one link to another. So remember we talked about internal links earlier on-page SEO? Internal links are just links on your web pages pointing to other pages on your own website. Well, when it comes to external links, so links pointing from one website to your website, that website that's linking to your website has an opportunity to say, hey, Google, you can follow this link or don't follow the link. And so if they choose to not follow the link, meaning they put a no follow tag into the anchor text, then Google's going to follow the link but not recognize the link itself. And what I mean by that is, hey, if you have, let's just use Valley Fig, has a link from Wikipedia. If Wikipedia has a link pointing to valleyfig.com, but the link itself is no follow, then what Google's going to do is not recognize the link itself. They're not going to recognize the link, so therefore you're not going to get credit or link juice, as we say. You're not going to get any juice from Wikipedia to Valleyfig. But if it is a follow link, then what Google's going to do is recognize the link and give you credit for the backlink. And by giving you credit for the backlink, that's going to inherently increase your domain authority. It's also going to likely increase your rankings. So you want to pay attention to the types of link building that's out there, no follow. And so anytime you try to establish a link on an external website, just make sure it's a follow. Make sure it's not a no follow, because if it's a no follow link, then you're not going to get the credit from the search engines. And so the whole idea behind link building in terms of SEO is to get some credit from a quality website to your website. And so if we look here, a follow link in this example is one where the href or the link itself doesn't have a no follow in it. But if a hyperlink does have a no follow in it, then that means you're not going to get the credit for the backlink. So remember, no follows, they don't allow search engine crawlers to follow the link. So if that's the case, it's not going to pass any link juice. When you don't pass quote unquote link juice, you're not going to get credit for the backlink. And so if you don't get credit for the backlink, then if we go back to our tools that we have available for measuring off-page SEO. So if I go back to, let's just say Moz, or even let's just say Search Console, I'll be able to see all these links here. These links that are showing up are follow links. Why? Because Google's recognizing the link. If they were no follow, then we wouldn't see the link in here. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And so just keep in mind, if it is a no follow, you'll see in the hypertext itself the no follow tag. And you can always check that, the HTML of any particular link. And so when we talk about link building, we talk about off-page SEO, really we're talking about how to get links on quality websites. And how do we do that? Well, I've listed here a few ways to do that. So you could do guest blogging, or blogging in general is a good off-page SEO / link building strategy. And I'll talk about more of that in a minute. But we can list our websites in reputable and trustworthy directories. I mentioned Wikipedia as an example, even though Wikipedia may not be classified as a directory, but there are other directories out there. You could ask for testimonials. So if you're working with clients or other websites, you could ask for a testimonial, or they can provide a link pointing back from their site to your site. It's about relationships, really, is what it comes down to. It's relationship building. And that's what a link is, relationship building. Or you could do content on social media. So these are just examples of ways to generate links. But let's go back to the blogging part, because blogging to me is an essential part to off-page SEO. And why is that? Because anytime you are part of a blog, you're generating content. And not only are you generating content, you're generating fresh content that's likely to be interesting to the end user. And with that content, yes, you can optimize that content. But the beauty about blogging is really anybody can do it. But if we want to connect blogging with relationships, if we're a food blogger, then we can write on other food blogs as a guest writer. And we can have that blog post link back to our own blog, as an example. Or we can have other bloggers in the same industry write a guest blog for us on their own blog and point their link back to our site. Blogging creates a lot of opportunities for link building because, again, it's a fresh canvas with interesting content. And when you have interesting content, then the opportunity for backlinking is going to be there, because if you're writing about something that's interesting, then naturally you're going to want to link to something else related to that that's interesting. And so that's the opportunity that blogging creates. So again, it's vital to get links from authoritative web pages, then multiple links from low quality web pages. So going back to the Link Explorer report, we want to be able to pay attention to those domain authorities or those websites with low domain authority. And really you should pay attention to really quality sites. Okay, you want to pay attention to quality sites. And so when we talk about links, there's inbound links, there's outbound links. We're interested in those inbound links. We're interested in getting links from high quality websites pointing to our own website. And again, that could be in the form of a blog. It could be social media. It could be a partner site. Okay, these are all inbound links. They just need to be followed. Make sure they're not a no follow. So it's simple, just getting an external link that's a follow to your own website. And so the one thing I want to mention here, though, on inbound links from external websites, and that's making sure that not necessarily every inbound link points to the home page. We want to be able to have links point to internal pages. So let's harken back to Search Console as an example. So Search Console, our links report, shows us links pointing from external websites to our own website. But what are those link pages? So if we look at some of those link pages here, we can see the top link pages. We could see on valleyfig.com/recipes is the top link page. Then the home page, then the About Us, then /international. So we want to make sure that if we're trying to generate backlinks from external websites to our own website, we want to make sure that they're pointing to interior pages, not necessarily the home page. And why do I say that? Because one of the benefits to link building and off-page SEO is ranking. So the whole idea about ranking is to get some of our other pages ranked, not necessarily the home page. The home page is just a doorway into your website. If we have interesting content out there on the web, and it's a food blogger as an example, and they're talking about a particular food item, well, they're going to want to link to a page that's related to what they're blogging about, that particular food item. They don't want to link to the homepage. The homepage is just a doorway. And so that's the whole idea behind link building. We want to link to multiple pages on the site. Why is that? Because if I take this particular page, valleyfig.com/recipes, and I just put that into Moz, and I look at the Link Explorer report for this particular page, the domain authority is still going to be the same, 35. That's what valleyfig.com is, 35. However, there's also another metric called page authority. So page authority is likewise with the domain authority, it's a score between 1 and 100. And so the more external links pointing to an internal page with high domain authority, that's likely going to increase the page authority of that page. So in other words, if we have good links from other websites pointing to that page, then it's going to increase the page authority for that page and ultimately the domain authority for that page. And so just like the domain authority, in this case Valleyfig, every page under that domain has a page authority score. So the higher the score, the likelihood that that page is going to rank in the search engine results. Okay, so that's the whole idea behind link building, is we want to improve the authority of the pages, not just the domain. But also more importantly, we also want to keep the end user in mind. So if it's from a blog or social media, the link pointing from that blog or social media platform should naturally point to something related to what you're talking about, not just the home page, because again, the home page more or less is the gateway into the website. So we want to get people to where they want to go. We want to naturally create a link from good content to some other good content. So that's the whole idea behind backlinking. So outbound links will direct a user from our own website to another website. So the idea here is it's okay to have outbound links on your own website. The natural ecosystem of the World Wide Web. Okay. What I would recommend here is not to have so many in a centrally located place. For example, don't have one page with nothing but external links on it. Sprinkle these external links, these outbound links throughout your website. But also, if it's not a reciprocal link, meaning if a guest blogger is not linking to your website, but you're just linking to theirs and they didn't ask you to, then maybe consider a no-follow tag. Maybe. Ideally, you want to make sure that these links are just natural in nature. So don't just have a habit of putting outbound links, because the whole idea behind outbound links is you want to keep people on your website. But if it's a natural link going from one content to another and you think the end user is going to benefit, then no problem. But just don't get in the habit of putting external links on your website, because that means that, hey, that user that's on your website may click on that link and leave your website and not come back. So keep that in mind as well, because you don't necessarily benefit from an SEO perspective by having outbound links on your own website. You want to do it as a courtesy if somebody else is linking to you. You want to do it for the end user if you feel they'll benefit from additional content on another website. But from an SEO perspective, it doesn't necessarily directly enhance your own website in terms of ranking. Turn our attention to duplicate content. So a lot of us have websites with a lot of content. Sometimes we go ahead and take our website and revise it, create a new one, or register a new domain and put content on that new domain. And so we may find ourselves in a situation at one point or the other where we have two websites with the same content. Or it could be the same website with a lot of content, but some of that may be duplicate as well. So we want to try and stay away from duplicate content, but for some of us, we may stumble across it accidentally. We may find ourselves having content that's duplicated. And so we want to try and prevent that because that's a no-no in the world of SEO. So if we have duplicate content appearing in more than one URL, there are ways to rectify not having the search engines recognize the content twice. So some examples of duplicate content are, for example, a spammer takes an article and posts the same content on his website. Or like I mentioned before, you create another website or register another domain and have that particular content on the old website still. Or you're writing a blog post and you tag it or categorize it, and the content shows up under the tags, under the categories, and just shows up in general. So there are a lot of scenarios where you can find yourselves with duplicate content. And so we want to rectify that. We don't want duplicate content. We want the search engines to recognize the original source of the content. And so basically, if you have two versions of a web page, you may result in duplicate content issues. Another example of that would be, for example, if you have products, you may find that that same product may be under two different categories. So how do we rectify that? Well, there are a number of different ways. And so the simple way is what they call a 301 redirect to the original URL. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have a new website with the same content, you could simply set up a redirect, and we call it a 301 redirect because 301 refers to permanent. So it's signifying to the search engines that you're permanently moving from this page to this page. The other way is through a canonical attribute. And so the word canonical may not register with some of you, so let's just take a minute to talk about what a canonical is. Basically, a canonical tag. It's a page level meta tag. So remember that meta tag description we talked about in on-page SEO? Well, think about this as another type of meta tag. And it's placed in the HTML header of your web page. So basically all it does is by placing this meta tag, it tells the search engines which URL is the original version to be displayed in index. So it's the purpose of a canonical is to keep the duplicate content out of the search engine index. So we want to consolidate our page rank, our page authority, our domain authority, all to original content. That's the whole idea of having a canonical. And it's a quick solution. So all you need to do is add a canonical tag to the header. So let me show you an example. If you have a site, let's just use CNN as an example. CNN.com has a lot of content. And sometimes, given the breadth of content that they have, they may run into duplicate content. So they simply just put a canonical tag into their header. And so by doing that, they're able to tell the search engines, hey, this page, this domain is the original. If you find yourself with multiple sites, well, you can also use Google Search Console. So remember, we used Google Search Console in earlier examples when we talked about links to your site, or we talked about that sitemap on on-page SEO. Well, if we go into Search Console, we could basically say, look, Google, because Search Console is a Google tool, we want to confirm that this is our domain. So this is the domain you should be focusing on. So you can leverage Search Console to communicate with Google regarding which site is important, which is the one that should get indexed. You can use a canonical, you can put that on any page of your website, or you can set up a 301 redirect. So those are the ways to fix duplicate content issues. 301s are the easiest. Canonicals tend to be temporary because they're just the page level. And then Search Console is a good method because it communicates with Google directly. And it allows Google to crawl various web pages differently than if you didn't tell them. Okay, so if you didn't tell them, they're just going to grab anything they can. So by communicating via the Google Search Console tool, it allows you to tell Google, this is the domain I want to focus in on. So let's talk then now about how the Google algorithms work. So we'll shift gears here and we'll talk about how these algorithms work on Google. So Google uses advanced concepts to retrieve data. So what they do is they're spidering, they're collecting web pages, and they're taking all those web pages back to their server. And anytime somebody does a query, they're delivering those web pages within milliseconds. They're delivering results based on your query. So that's in general how it works. So it uses a combination of different algorithms to deliver the best results. They want the best results. And so some of the most popular algorithms below are Google Panda, Google Penguin, and Google RankBrain. So these are all things that Google has done to make sure that they're constantly tweaking their search engines to deliver the best results. So let's talk about some of these popular algorithms. And before we talk about these popular algorithms, let's just make one thing clear, that Google's always tweaking their algorithms on their search engine. And so if you want to get an idea how often they do it, well, they do it every day. They're constantly tweaking it, but what they do is they release major changes to their algorithm a few times a year. So if you want to get a sense of what those changes look like, well, you could go to Moz.com and you can go to Google-algorithm-change, and you could see here that, hey, Google changes its search algorithm around 500 to 600 times. While most of these are minor, Google again rolls out major changes like Panda, like Penguin, that affects search results in significant ways. So you can go here and you can go all the way back to 2000 and see some of the algorithm changes that have occurred over the last few years. And you can see here the last major one was done in August of 2018. That was the Meta Core update. So they're constantly making changes to their search engine to deliver a more concise, more better ecosystem for the end user. So if it's a better search engine for the end users are going to come back. So the whole idea is continuing to tweak the system, the algorithms, to better show more accurate results. And so let's take a look at some of the major algorithm changes that they've done in the past. So the first is we'll talk about Google Panda. And Panda was an algorithm that was released back in 2011. So here we are in 2019, it's a few years ago, but still significant in that really this algorithm emphasized high quality content. Because before Panda, there's just a lot of content out there on the internet, and there was a lot of spam content, there's a lot of duplicate content. And so really the idea behind Panda is for Google to really deliver in their search engine results pages high quality content. So what it did was it removed web pages that had low quality or duplicate content. So that was the whole idea behind, the algorithm nicknamed Panda. It removed low quality and duplicate content. And that kind of cleaned things up a bit, where if you did a search query now, you'd actually see better results. And one thing about Panda is because there's so much quality, because Google's indexing so much there on the internet, that it's constantly being updated. It's updated regularly. So the next one we're going to talk about is Google Penguin. So Penguin was released after Panda, and what that focused in on was low quality links. So remember, we talked about link building. We talked about quality links over quantity. So naturally, you're going to have links naturally from all websites, whether they be high quality or low quality. The whole idea behind this algorithm is to sever the links that are low quality. And so the idea behind that was they focused on two areas. So they focused in on link schemes and keyword stuffing. So that's what Penguin focused on. Was link schemes were basically almost link farming, where you produced mass amounts of backlinks. And not all of them were good quality. They weren't natural links. Links should be natural from one high quality site or blog to another high quality site or blog. And by creating link schemes, you created an ecosystem where links just went to irrelevant, low quality, spam related pages. And so Google's Penguins algorithm update focused in on that effort to remove or combat pages that had poor links from being indexed in their search engine results. And then they also combated keyword stuffing. Keyword stuffing is nothing more than taking your targeted keyword and stuffing it into the content of your page, your title tag, your meta description. So any sites that were caught up doing that basically suffer the consequences, because what Penguin did was take care of sites that basically were accused of keyword stuffing or had characteristics of keyword stuffing, and they removed sites that had a lot of links pointing to it from poor quality sites, and vice versa. Sites that really had a lot of external links pointing to other poor quality sites. So that's what Penguin did. They took a look at those two areas. And so if we talk about link schemes again, Penguin's aim was to decrease the ranking of web pages that created artificially by using black hat techniques. And basically what I mean by black hat techniques, that artificially creating links that just didn't make sense, just for the sake of getting the backlink, just for the sake of passing link juice. And so that's what a link scheme is or was. And so Google basically tweaked their algorithm to combat those poor link schemes. And so keyword stuffing, as I mentioned a minute ago, it's just repetitive usage of the same keyword. And that just basically suffers. The content is the thing that suffers here. And when the content suffers, the end user suffers. So Google is all about quality content. And when you have quality content and that quality content's indexed and users find what they're looking for, chances are they're going to go back to the search engine to continue to find what they're looking for, with the end result being presented with quality content. So keyword stuffing really dilutes the quality of the content. And then let's talk about the third algorithm, which is RankBrain. So RankBrain is a processing algorithm that uses machine learning. And what that does, that machine learning interprets search queries that users search on Google. So, for example, if RankBrain sees a word or phrase it isn't familiar with, basically the machine can make a guess as to what words or phrases might have a similar meaning and filter the result accordingly. So basically take these search engine queries and present them in a way that's logical so that the end result can be something that's relevant to what you're looking for. And so, for example, if you're searching for online marketing, you will get results related for digital marketing on search engine result pages. Why? Because RankBrain will interpret that particular keyword. And they're trying to basically match, based on all the data they collected, what words or phrases might have a similar meaning. So online marketing, digital marketing have similar meanings.